Hey, spoilers! Let me take you back to late 2020, throughout 2021. I mean, in terms of Spider-Man.
What is going on? This is insanity.
Doc Ock, Alfred Molina, is confirmed to appear in the MCU Spider-Man 3.
Dr. Octopus is going to be in Spider-Man 3, played by Alfred Molina.
Actors from the previous Spider-Man movie franchises are reprising their roles for Spider-Man 3.
Willem Dafoe, the original Green Goblin, and the original Sandman are coming back for Spider-Man 3.
Jamie Foxx coming back to play Electro.
Doctor Strange is in this movie.
Charlie Cox, Daredevil,
Emma Stone is coming back as Gwen Stacy.
And Kirsten Dunst from the Raimi trilogy
are also appearing.
Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield.
Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield.
Tobey, Andrew.
Is it called Spider-Man 3 because there are 3 Spider-Men in the movie?
You know, Spider-Man 3, tentatively titled.
It's the most ambitious standalone superhero movie ever made.
There isn't anything to ruin, bro. I'm not the werewolf. I promise you I am not the werewolf.
The Spider-Man No Way Home trailer has officially been leaked on TikTok.
Hello, Peter.
There's a photo going around of you and Tobey Maguire on the set of the new Spider-Man movie. And
it's a Photoshop.
Tom Hardy posted a pic of himself wearing a production hat from No Way Home, leading many to speculate that Venom is in the movie.
That guy. You're not Peter Parker.
The lizard getting punched by air. Are there more Spider-Man in the movie? Is this where they jump in to help?
Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield. Go ahead.
And then, December 15th.
You're the fucking werewolf!
Spider-Man No Way Home was quite possibly the most hyped up movie maybe ever. Up there with Episode 7 and Avengers Endgame, and for good reason. It seemed with every new piece of information, either revealed or leaked, whether true or false about the movie, that this could in no possible universe ever exist, or at the very least be any good. Now myself, I try not to have too high of expectations for things I'm excited for. Somewhat a believer of what MJ says in the movie. If you expect disappointment, then you can never really be disappointed. But the problem for me in this instance was Spider-Man. That's my boy right there. Easily my favourite superhero. I adore the original trilogy and Into the Spider-Verse, and I have a Lego Spider-Pig keychain. So this is serious stuff for me, guys. Therefore, I found it very difficult in trying to contain my excessive, eager anticipation for the movie. I had a countdown on my phone to the film's release date like a year in advance. I blocked keywords on social media to make sure no spoilers would be seen. And the amount of times I would do this... Wait, no. No. This, with the slightest shred of hope that web shooters would exit out my wrists in order to grab whatever was in front of me or open a door. My friends must have hated me. And probably still do, because I still do it to this day. I know diehard fans of the character have their gripes with modern MCU Spider-Man, but I like it. I think Tom Holland's great, Homecoming's pretty good, Far From Home's okay. But when we're talking about bringing back the characters and original actors from previous iterations of the franchise, specifically the Raimi trilogy, and the seemingly impossible possibility of the 3 Spider-Men sharing the screen together,
this is something else.
Smash cut to watching No Way Home for the first time, and it was nothing short of overwhelming. It didn't feel real. It felt like a dream. I'd forbidden myself from watching the main trailer, so I was genuinely surprised to see the Lizard and Sandman show up. Let alone, well, you know who. It's cringe to admit, but I was so consumed by my own excitement that I couldn't even really sleep the night before, like a kid on Christmas Eve, tossing and turning about how I would feel if the movie was bad. The movie I'd hyped up so goddamn much. The movie that was getting me through the year. But luckily, I was so happy to be able to say that I loved it. I saw it twice, I loved it so much. It's all I wanted to talk about, I loved it so much. And everybody else seemed to love it so much too. The response to the movie was insane, if not a little bit over the top. Enjoyed by critics and general audiences alike, they had somehow pulled the unimaginable off. And it was Christmas time. This was the best Christmas present I could ask for. However, I've noticed a shift in the somewhat accepted consensus towards the movie as time passes more and more. In that, if we look past the dreamy lens we view that first experience with, months on, the movie isn't anything to write home about. Blinded by the fleeting thrill of nostalgia, it's just generally an okay movie. This is in part, I think, due to a growing fatigue and disinterest with the MCU post-Endgame, and particularly with Phase 4 as a whole. The idea this vague, multiversal story thread has no real gravitas within the scope of the cinematic universe, and is just a low-effort plot device and shallow attempt to retain audience attention. Side note, how many MCU sucks now videos do we need? Your main criticism is that of oversaturation, one I agree with, yet this is the 47th video on the subject? Lol, but...
I missed the part where that's my problem.
So coming from a massive fan of the movie and Spider-Man franchise as a whole, as well as someone very critical of the nostalgia cash grabs of recent memory, I think it'd be interesting to re-examine the film now the dust has settled and a year has passed. Was I merely blinded by nostalgia? Did my childish capabilities overshadow my critical lens? What is Spider-Man No Way Home really like 1 year later? Let's find out.
3, that's a magic number.
Rewatching No Way Home was not at all what I expected. It really did feel like a different experience, especially watching it this time by my lonesome, but allowed me to truly see the film for what it is and digest my thoughts much more clearly. I'd forgotten how quickly it moves, especially in its first act. I'd forgotten how truly hard-hitting certain parts feel. And overall, I'd forgotten just how much fun it is to watch it all unravel. I want to first talk about what jumped out to me in terms of like the technical aspects and how they hold up before getting into the meat of my discussion. It's been said to death that the filmmaking in the MCU for the most part is pretty bog standard, boring and uninteresting outside of the action sequences and obviously with some exceptions. Like comparing the previous modern Spider-Man entries with the earlier works, it's like night and day. You could probably watch the entire Raimi trilogy on mute and still have an incredible time with how creative and thought out nearly every sequence is visually. And say what you want about Mark Webb's duology, but there is some kind of a natural style there. So colour me stoked when in the first 5 minutes of No Way Home there's a goddamn wanna. I can't for the life of me think of any straight up examples of this in the MCU, and if one is slipping my mind, I guess it wasn't very memorable to me. And then colour me even more stoked when the film continues to incorporate even more creative visual flares. Obviously the Marvel factory formula still has its greasy fingerprints over the final product. The Doc Ock fight on the bridge being noticeably kinda ugly on a rewatch were probably the weakest CGI moments for me, especially when it can't help itself but be compared to one of my favourites, and you know what, one of the best action scenes of all time in Spider-Man 2 on the train. But you know, there's examples of actual colour on display, definitely improved lighting, and the camera actually moving. So baby steps, but important to note improvement. A key thing that stood out to me way more this time around was the music. Michael Giacchino continues to prove himself as one of the best composers working today. I particularly love the tone of the score prior to the Doctor Strange fight scene as they discuss the villain's fate, as well as obviously Tom's Spider-Man motif and its different variations throughout. I know some were disappointed with the absence of both Tobey's and Andrew's Spider-Man themes in the movie, but to me that just speaks to the fact that this is Tom Holland's Peter Parker story, something I'll get onto more later. And when some motifs from the previous films are reincorporated, it's tastefully done, greatly enhancing Doc Ock's introduction, and it's objectively funny that they play flippin' Electro's dubstep theme for like a split second during his first appearance, like, come on. And finally, some modest issues I had in terms of story were also put on full display during this rewatch. Why does Sandman's motive change so suddenly without real explanation? How does Doc Ock know that Norman Osborn is Green Goblin? I also wish the idea of Spider-Man's identity being revealed to the world was explored a little more, as that is such an interesting concept to me, as well as more of a compelling conclusion to the Flash and Peter dynamic that had been building for the past 2 movies. But can all these clunky means be forgiven in justification for a potentially more exciting and satisfying end? Let's address the elephant in the room. Or should I say, the lizard in the van?
Where's Connors? He told me he wants to stay in the truck.
No, I shouldn't say that. That was bad. Apologies.
It's some
cheap
trick.
Nostalgia
Of yours.
We can all agree that the mere inclusion of these past characters was probably solely a money-calculated move in the interest of breaking greater box office records. Congrats, we all understand the cynicism behind how major motion pictures are made. But the way that these characters are incorporated within the story itself is where I would disagree with the criticism of the film just relying on nostalgia and references. It's not a retread or remake of any of the previous films, but instead an entirely new experience, with Tom Holland's Spider-Man always at the focal point of the story, in regards to his development and character growth. We've never seen all these villains interact with one another before, let alone 3 Spider-Men together. It's something unique, exciting, and very importantly, fun to watch. On this rewatch, I found myself constantly quoting lines along with the movie, just as I would do with any other Spider-Man film, because it created and has become something iconic in its own right. Sure, there are moments where they fall into the trap of merely I understood that reference, but overall it's something completely brand new, while paying reverence to what came before it. I want to talk about what is still my favourite scene to this day, and one I think to which speaks to what I'm trying to say here. After the first appearance of Andrew and Tobey, and Aunt May's death, which, by the way, to be totally honest, didn't truly emotionally affect me that much on my first 2 watches, but surprisingly had me in pieces on this occasion. The 3 Spider-Men meet for the first time on a rooftop. What was expected to be this triumphant, air-punching moment turned out to be much more quiet and poignant of a scene, one of connection and about loss. Tom initially has his guard up against the other 2 Peters. He doesn't want to hear what they have to say, he doesn't want to know that they relate to his position. I feel this speaks to how, you know when you're in a bad place, or overcome by grief. We have this tendency to close off from those around us because we want these feelings to be our own. We want to try and overcome them ourselves. In some ways we want to think we're, I guess, maybe special, in the thought that nobody has been through or is going through what we have. But in reality, the universe is so much bigger than you realize. I think the reason Spider-Man is my favorite superhero, like so many others, is he's just a kid, one thrust into this incredible but incredibly difficult and isolating position, full of tough choices where sometimes his selflessness and naivety get the best of him, leading to unimaginable consequences, and therefore he is inherently a lonely character. And this scene is a kid coming face to face with the idea that he isn't alone out there, making the ending even more heartbreaking but also with a glimmer of hope. Loss is kind of an essential part of Peter Parker's character, but also just everybody's life. Loss is something that can completely confine us, but also bring us together, and is here what unites the three Peters. And for them to explore that in the forefront, I think is actually kind of beautiful and totally unexpected. With help from MJ, Tom listens to them as they explain their experiences with loss. Andrew, given an incredible performance as always, describes how he let the loss of Gwen overcome his Peter, resulting in him going down the wrong path, and therefore wants to guide Tom's Peter in the opposite direction. Toby then explains how he acted on the loss of Uncle Ben in the wrong way, and doesn't want Tom to make the same mistake. Sure, Tom's Peter could have learned these things from maybe any other characters, but to me, it's so much more meaningful coming from these two. In other words, himself, but older and wiser. As Tom utters the pivotal words, I absolutely love Toby's reaction. His subtle facial expression shifting, emphasizing the weight that these words had on this character. With great power comes great responsibility. All of them had to hear it in some way or another, and it's what connects them. This is their gift. This is their curse. All of them are Spider-Man. Yes, it can be disheartening that we seem to just continuously obsess over our past, appearing to only respond to the comfort of the same things we already know and love, just in slightly different packaging. But where No Way Home differs from other similar attempts for me, is that it has heart. It's where the Raimi films triumphed, as well as the other very best modern Marvel movies. The reoccurring characters are treated with care and respect. It in no way tarnishes the previous movies, but instead rewards the audience for their adoration, adding to their storylines in interesting ways, incorporating these characters in new, exhilarating sequences, and providing powerful and emotional moments outside of the multiversal shenanigans. If Toby just reappeared to say pizza time and then Bully Maguire danced himself out of there, yeah, I'd be disappointed and offended, but to my genuine surprise, we got so much more than that. Incorporating the other two Spider-Men as these mentor-like characters and creating this brotherly bond between them all was extremely effective and just a joy to watch. Sure, on a baseline level of entertainment, it's simply enjoyable to see these characters and actors return. But if the entertainment only solely consists of the momentary excitement of seeing these legends back at it, then I'd agree this wouldn't be anything notable or withstanding. But there's a reason that No Way Home is still being discussed a year later, unlike other legacy sequels, because at its core, it's just another classic Spider-Man story, one of consequence and responsibility.
Sometimes, to do what's right, we have to be steady and give up the thing we want the most, even our dreams.
So let's circle back to my original thesis. Was I blinded by nostalgia? Yes. But after taking off my rose-tinted glasses, I realised the film has so much more to offer and appreciate than just that. It's genuinely emotionally effective, that on this watch got me tearing up in ways it hadn't before, when I was more in awe of other elements. And how it uses nostalgia for the most part is executed tastefully and purposefully, in service of the story and putting these beloved characters in new scenarios. Did my childish capabilities overshadow my critical lens? Of course, but viewing it today, I feel the film still has a lot to admire. It's a testament to the movie that it transported me back to how I felt when I first watched the other entries in the franchise, with the characters feeling just as they did in the past, or being taken in brand new yet satisfying directions, and the acting being pretty excellent all round. And anyway, I'm sure it's immensely difficult to even attempt to actually recapture that feeling, and not supposedly ruin people's childhoods in the process, like we've seen in recent years. What is Spider-Man No Way Home really like, 1 year later? You're right, it doesn't feel as special as that first time around. Maybe it's just one of those things where you just had to be there. But I was there. I was there for all of it. I'm always going to have that memory of sitting there opening day. School has just finished, I've just had a pizza, and I'm surrounded by my favourite people, watching 3 Spider-Men swing around together, something I wished I'd see for months and months on end. And as my friend whispers to me, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. I'm not ashamed to admit, but tears of joy run down my face. And why should I look past that? So yeah, maybe it isn't high art, whatever that means. Maybe it is just a bunch of fan service. Maybe some of the CG looks iffy. Maybe some plot threads are thrown by the wayside. Maybe it's far from perfect. But it made me happy. And it still makes me happy. And that means something. Because what should a great film do in part but elicit a genuine emotional reaction? So, Does No Way Home hold up, taking away all the obscene hype that surrounded it? Well, that's a subjective question, but for me, fuck yeah, it does. That's a dope movie right there. And Spider-Man, thank you for existing.
It's what we do. Yeah, it's what we do.
And I guess there's only one thing left to say. Skadoosh.